Hey folks, it's Nathan here, or FVR 375, and as you can see today, I'm going to do a review on the Wedgetail Industries MPR Mini, with the one in front of me here being in 223 Remington. So basically what I'm going to do is a bit of an upfront summary and discussion of some of the features on the rifles, the things that I like about it, don't like about it, which there are not many of. And then we're going to go down to the range and we're going to do some accuracy testing in a fairly realistic context for this type of rifle with the types of optics that you're likely to use on it, and then we'll finish up with some closing thoughts. So pretty well straight up, as you see it set up here in front of me at the moment is more or less standard from factory. So you've got the Magpul furniture on it, plastic pistol grip, and by the way this rifle is clear, but pump, front there. And then this one's fitted with a Ninox brake and a blast jacket as well up the front there. And currently, as you can see in front of it, we've got the Magpul 10-shot mag that comes with the rifle. I've got a Zerotech Thrive 1:8 LPVO optic, and on the rifle I've got a Pulsar Thermion 2 XL60 thermal unit. So I'll just start talking through some of the general features of the rifle. As you can see, it's more or less a pretty standard AR blueprint. These rifles are not a lot different to the MPR 308s. They're just a scaled down version, being the MPR Mini, which would be pretty obvious from the name. That's it. So basically it's an AR blueprint without a gas system. There is a completely different buffer system in the back and a different receiver cutout, so these aren't compatible with your AR uppers and lowers. They're their own design, but the furniture on them in terms of the stocks, the pistol grips, and anything that goes on the M-lock is obviously compatible with any of the other AR style products that are out there. So the build quality on these is really nice. From factory, they come with what is a fairly typical GI single stage trigger. This particular rifle we've got here, I've had fitted out with a, I put it on there, but a LaRue Tactical 2-stage trigger, which is not really so much a commentary on the GI single stage trigger that comes with these rifles. It's more just a personal preference for me. A bit of a fan of the 2-stage trigger. So having obviously a number of reviews on these rifles out on the internet currently, and they've been around for a little while now, there's probably not a great requirement to go through all the really small specifics in terms of the bits and pieces that are on an AR action, but it, as I said, is a fairly standard blueprint. So you've got your safety on your left hand side, you've got your magazine release here, dust cover. On this side you've got your bolt release, which is good. And one of the good features of this rifle is on an empty mag, it'll come back when you cycle it and it'll lock open. Okay, and then once you've got another mag in there, you can release that forward either with the mag catch on this side, or you can just move the pump itself. And as you can see with the way the fore end is set up on these, there is enough room to mount them in a clamp. So I've got them in one of the hog clamps at the moment, just for the purposes of the review, just to essentially have the rifle sitting up. But quite versatile in terms of the different ways you can mount this rifle, either on a bench, in a clamp, out of a vehicle, or just freestanding if you're out in the field shooting. And obviously there's lots of accessories that you can put on these things depending on what you like. You can put a foregrip under here if you like. I've seen a lot of these rifles carrying the angled foregrip, which is not too bad. I personally don't really see the need. There's plenty of grip on the slide and it moves nice and freely, so I haven't really worried about that on my particular rifle. So good full-length Picatinny rail on top is an excellent feature, and that's something I'll keep bringing up in the later parts of the video. So these rifles, we're going to talk about context quite a bit, but they're a very flexible unit for the Australian market. So the pump action is good. It is a very reliable mechanical repeating action, which is fantastic. But you can dress these rifles up any way you want for the task at hand, and the task that these rifles are suited for, could be a whole range of things. From IPSC shooting, they're ideal for that. for pest control for the land manager or landowner, where you need the capacity to have the ability to mount multiple different sighting systems and or thermal like what's on it now. And you know, for target shooting, hunting of medium and smaller game, you know, they're all doable things with this type of rifle. And one of the great things about any of the AR platforms, the Wedgetail included, is that they are really modular in terms of what you can do to them. So you can change lots of things around on these rifles without any issue at all. And case in point is where we are now. So I had the good folks at TSA Outdoors had sent me through the Zerotech 1:8 LPVO scope. I'll talk more about it during the shooting part of the video. It has a great reticle in it. You know, it's got a T-shape with like a mini crosshair dot in the center, which is really functional for all sorts of field shooting, and a magnification range from 1 to 8. So really good and ideally suited to this sort of rifle. Really good clear glass on it. I'm quite a fan at the moment. The only issue, and I do mention it in the range shooting part later, is I found it, just for me, a little bit picky in terms of your head position, getting correct eye relief on it. And that's not really, you know, perhaps so much a commentary on the scope as it is just where my head position sits with the angles I had set up on this rifle. But as you can see, on it at the moment, I've got the Pulsar XL60, which is, you know, one of the biggest thermal optics in the range, and it fits perfectly on that rail, and some worn mounts as well. So altogether a fairly flexible setup. The other thing that's good about these, and you know, again, it's not unique to the Wedgetail, but it is an AR thing. You know, you can move the buttstock wherever you want it. So if you've got someone who's a little bit shorter, female, younger shooters, or you know, just in general, you don't have the long arms to reach forward a long way. Depending how you set the rifle, you can set up the length of pull on this rifle to be whatever you want, and that's a really good feature as well. Yeah. So, look, the context of these rifles, I talked to it a little bit earlier, but you know, there's those in the Australian society that would point out that, you know, this sort of rifle is a bit scary. It's a black-looking thing. You know, it's probably not what they like because of, you know, appearance. But the reality is, these types of firearms are really handy. They're really ergonomic, and these rifles are very, very handy tools. You know, wherever you come from in the shooting space. So, as I said before, you know, for land managers, for the recreational shooter, for the target shooter, you know, for someone who's doing some comp shooting with IPSC, they really do fit within that market. So, these things are not a scary semi-automatic, you know, AR style thing that you see often over in the US. They're an Australian-made platform that is very modular, hence it has some of the features that those type of blueprints do, but it is completely different. So it is not compatible with most of the AR, you know, mechanics in terms of the bits and pieces on the rifles. Yeah, so as I did before, the pump is really quite ergonomic when you set it up. So you can either ride it forward and treat it like a pretty standard bolt action. There is a little bit of a spring in the buffer here on these, which has no issues at all picking rounds up. So you can cycle it back and let it go as well, and that's very much a good feature. So a fair bit has been made in some of the other reviews I've seen of these, of the speed of firing on these rifles, and again, it's about the context of why that's important on the Australian market. And the reality is, it's not important for, you know, for those that are, you know, get a bit of a thrill out of the tactical side of things. Yes, you can shoot it relatively quickly, but you know, where that is particularly important and relevant, again, is in the hunting field, where, you know, from the point of view of humanely destroying animals and finishing off pests quickly, you need to be able to fire multiple shots in rapid succession accurately. And a modular rifle like this, with the way these are, is perfect in that role. And even in 223, you know, these come in 223 and 300 blackout at the moment. You know, the twist rate on them, I haven't actually had a good look, but I think it's 1 in 8. And you know, that twist rate will stabilise anything from a 50 grain projectile through to 75 grains plus, and we're going to test that down on the range and show you that that's the case. But yeah, no issues at all with any of that. So it does give you a fair range of ammunition for specific tasks that you can use in the field, and it makes it a very versatile product in that space where, you know, humane destruction considerations and fast for live shooting to deal with pests, you know, are key considerations for what you do. Anyway, that's probably all I need to talk about at this stage. We'll head down to the range and we'll just go and do some shooting. So the plan as it stands at the moment, we'll do 5 round groups, 5 different lots of ammo, and then we'll go a little bit quicker and put a fast mag through it. So you'll see the rifle, you know, in the conditions that you're probably going to use this in, where it's getting a little bit of rapid fire through it, not allowing the barrel to cool down. You know, probably not really a fair assessment in terms of the overall accuracy, but a very fair assessment in terms of how these rifles are going to get used. And look, I'm not being critical of the LPVO Zerotech scope. I've been quite impressed with how this optic performs, and I really do like the way it sits on this rifle. But obviously, if you're going to test for specific accuracy, I would have set up the bench to be of interest, and then put a higher powered optic on it so I could more clearly see my target at 100 metres. Not to say that you can't see it clearly at 100, but obviously on 8 power, a 1 to 1.5 inch dot is not particularly large, so you know, there's that to contend with. Anyway, as most of you know, Wedgetail rifles are Australian made, and that in itself is a pretty key reason to give some consideration to these rifles. Look, I'm probably a little bit biased with Wedgetail gear. I've been using it for a long time, but you know, I really like the MPR Mini. It's just more of a good thing in terms of the MPR pump action 308 that I've had and been running for a little while. And indeed, that, you know, I can talk about reliability as much as you want. Not so much with this rifle because it hasn't done that much work, but that MPR 308 of mine, realistically, I've probably put 5,000 or 6,000 rounds through it now. It's had a lot of use since I've had it, over on some jobs where we couldn't use Cat D rifles, and so we did use the MPR for a lot of aerial shooting work, and it really performed very well. So, you know, the AR style action is very reliable, and when you've got the push rod set up off a shuttle on an MPR Mini, which is cycling that bolt for you, there's just not a lot of stuff that comes back through the action, so they don't get dirty, apart from the odd bit of brass shaving depending on the type of ammunition that you're using. So there's just not a lot to go wrong, which is obviously really good. And you know, the 223 cartridge is pretty well ideally suited to reliable function on these. At some point in the future, I'm planning on getting a 300 blackout upper for this rifle as well, which will be used for some close range niche pig work as well, which I think will be a good thing. Although my opinions on the 300 blackout are probably a topic for another time. Anyway, that's probably enough talking for now on this particular rifle. Let's head down the range and go and do some shooting. So folks, for the shooting part of this review, what I'm actually going to do is probably quite a unfair way of reviewing the rifle, but I'm essentially going to fire 5 round groups. As I mentioned up the top, the optic I have on the rifle currently is the fairly new Zerotech 1 to 8 power LPVO trace optic. Now the optic's really good, love the clarity, but 8 power is probably not the highest magnification level you could be using for precision shooting and testing the accuracy of the rifle. However, that's not probably really what I'm about so much. I'm more about the practicalities of shooting a rifle like this, and a 1 to 8 power LPVO fits really well on a rifle of this nature for day shooting and for pest control work. So I think that's a good representation of, you know, one of the typical optics you might use on a rifle like this. And certainly I think the limitation with accuracy, shooting at 100 metres, which is what we're doing today against basically 1 MOA or 1 inch black circles, is going to be me and the optic more so than the rifle. So I have done a little bit of shooting with the Mini so far. I've been pretty happy with the results shooting the 64 grain Winchester PowerPoint. But yeah, so that's the context of today. The other thing we're not really going to do, so we're going to fire these groups relatively quickly. We're not going to let the rifle cool down, and part of the reason for doing that is about, you know, to go through the function of the rifle and demonstrate how effectively or ineffectively the rifle works when it's being put through a little bit of work. So the ammunition we're going to run today, first group, will be the Winchester 64 grain ammunition. Then we've got the Winchester 55 grain soft point ammunition. We've got the Federal Blue Box 55 grain ammunition. We have the Federal Premium 223 ammo, which is a Spear 52, I think it is, yep, 52 grain hollow point. And then we have the Hornady 75 grain 223 tap ammunition, which is fitted with the 75 grain boat tail hollow point. So that's a fair array of ammunition to put through a rifle, both in terms of the feeding function, accuracy, speed. And to that point with speed, I've got my Garmin Zero Crony set up there, and we'll talk to speed as we go. So basically we're just going to ramble through this. I'm not going to keep walking up and back to the target. We'll go through the target at the end and see how we actually did. As you can see in front here, again, I'm not shooting off a super steady rest either. I've just got a front bag, and I've just got a little bag here at the back to put my hand on to steady up a bit. It is by no means a bench rest in terms of shooting capacity. And as I said, this is a pump action rifle for field use in terms of the context I've talked about earlier in the video, and that's how I intend to review it. Anyway, we'll go through the first 5 round group, and then we'll crack on and get into it. .800 feet per second. Good. Just under 2800. .2740, a little bit slower on that one. All clear. The shots all felt relatively good, but as you can see, there's a little bit of movement on that bag. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, I can't actually see those shots on that target from here. 10 power binos, and I can't really see the holes, which probably hopefully means they're in the black bit, which is good. We'll move on to the 55 grain Winchester load. See how that shoots. 5 of those, 3, 4, 5. So the rifle feels good. I do like the Zerotech optic. The reticle in it's fantastic. It's basically, I don't know what the technical name of the reticle I've put in there, but basically a T reticle with a center X in the middle of the crosshair. And it is really good to shoot accurately. I do like it for faster field shooting down on the lower powers. On the top power here at 8 power, and it might just be my eye, but I find the eye relief a little bit critical, so you know, you do have to be a little bit careful with your head position in terms of where you are, but it's certainly for this type of thing I wouldn't suggest a particularly limiting factor. Anyway, let's go and put another group down. $28.80. $29.17. $29.14. $2,900. $28.83. Yeah. Okay. Have a look here. I doubt I'll be able to see that again. It's a little bit hard in the shade. It's interesting. These are Steiner Predator binoculars. They're a little bit old, but that optic's a fair bit clearer than these are, and these are a premium bit of glass, so that's actually quite impressive. So anyway, that's 10 rounds down. Make sure everything there is nice and tight. Getting a little bit warm, but we're not going to let that get in the way of a good time here. So next load we're going to put through is the Federal 55 grain soft point. 5. Yeah, rifle feels good, cycling nicely. Lot to like about all of that. As I mentioned up the top there, I have put a aftermarket trigger on this because, not because there's anything wrong with the single stage mil spec that they put on these MPR minis, probably just because I'm a little bit more fussy than most, but it is what it is. So generally speaking, across the board for that last lot of 5 with those 55s with the Winchesters, we were looking at in that 2,900 feet per second, extreme spread maybe 40 feet per second over the group, but yeah, it's pretty good for a short barrel. Okay. Righto, so Federal Blue Box 55 grain into the top right. $29.66, bit faster. $3,000. $29.75. Might fall that one a little bit to the left, so we'll excuse that if we see it on the target later. $29.84. And last one of these. $29.74. Yeah. Righto. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother having a look up there to see where they went. I just flat out can't see those on that target at this range. So my target up there, I'll show you a little bit later on, but it's 100 metres and it's in the shade a little bit, so it's a bit hard to see the holes. Well, our next group is going to be the Federal Premium. That's a 52 grain hollow point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Starting to get a little bit warm now, this rifle, which is fine. They should be able to get a little bit warm and continue functioning. Again, that context for these rifles, these are an absolutely excellent pest control tool. In fact, after we've done this review, I'm taking this up top and I'm putting a Pulsar Thermion 2 XL60 optic on it for the next job, which is a little bit of niche feral cat control work. So yeah, ideal for that sort of thing. Nice and accurate, good fast follow-ups. Anyway, 52 grain spears, spear projectiles on the Federal Premium load. I'd expect these to be going a little bit quicker. No idea how they're going to shoot. Let's find out. Okay, bottom left hand target. Let's get ourselves set up. A bit slower than I thought, 28.75. $29.80. Big extreme spread. That shot wasn't probably my finest. That might be a little bit off, that one. Yeah, okay, so that group there, obviously shot fine, fed fine, good function, all that. I don't know, those velocities were a little bit all over the place with that ammo, which is more likely a commentary on the ammo than anything else. A lot of that other stuff there has been really quite consistent in terms of the extreme spread on those groups. So this stuff, the 75 grain Hornady tap. So at the front end there we used the 64 grain, and that is a good dual purpose round in 223, so it's effective on predators, but it is more effective than most of the other stuff on feral pigs. This stuff's a bit the other way around. So this Hornady tap ammunition I've used extensively with the 75 grain projectile. It's devastating on pigs. It's not real good on most other things, and the reason being it's got that sort of, I guess you'd call it a match tip hollow point on that projectile. It tends to penetrate 2 to 3 inches before it really starts having that mechanical action and opening effectively, which is wonderful on a pig and very effective, and will pretty much knock anything with a shoulder shot quite capably. It's not really good on a dog or a cat or anything like that, depending on the angle of the animal. So anyway, I just threw it in because it is a round that I use a little bit when I'm using a 223 on certain sites, because that's the right thing to use for that particular context. Not saying the 223 is a wonderful pig round, but if you pick the right ammunition, then certainly you can get the job done. Righto, last group of 5. Let's see, blast jacket's still nice and that's nice and warm. So you'd say this is pretty unfair at this point of view, because we'll put a bit of ammo through this rifle, so you'd expect these groups to be getting worse, but we'll see how we go. Like ultimately, in reality, these rifles are pretty well free floated, so you know, they've got really good quality barrels in them. So yeah, we'll see. Hot rifle, last group. Okay, bottom right target, and we'll have a look at what speeds we're getting here as well. fair bit slower, so these are around 2,500 feet per second. Yeah. Righto. What we'll do now, I'll go up and grab that target, and I'll bring it back, and we'll have a bit of a look at how these group sizes went in reality land. So before we get into the accuracy part of it, I guess one of the key things with this rifle is that's 5 different lots of ammo with projectiles that are significantly different in terms of the ogive on them, the grain weight, the powder charges, and what they're designed to operate for in terms of purpose. They're all hunting ammunition, but markedly different purposes across these rounds. And what you can see there is that this rifle does feed and shoot them all flawlessly, even when hot, and that's a good thing. That's what these sort of rifles are for. We will do a couple more bits of shooting with it shortly on steel, just to do some rapid realignment, which, to be honest, is probably, with the style of optic I've got on it and the way I've got this rifle set up right at this minute, is probably a more sensible indication of accuracy than testing 100 metre groups. But yeah, we'll give that a go. Yeah, we'll see what we've done accuracy wise though. So back up top now, I've just went up and collected that target. So you can see there that first group, when my finger is here in the centre, that's a 64 grain Winchester load. So I've called that the group there. I've got a shot out here that's an outlier. I dare say that's just me having a little bit of a shocker, or I might have hit a bit of grass up there. There's a little bit of vegetation on the way through. So pretty acceptable. Didn't actually manage to bring a tape measure down, but as you can see from that group size, you're talking probably 1 3/4 inches there. Again, fairly quick shooting, 8 power optic. Up the top here, you've got the 55 grain Winchester load. So by the looks of things, that's a fairly concentric group. Doesn't seem to love that 55 grain ammunition. That's probably 2 inches on the total group size there, but again, shot fairly quick. Over here on the top right, the Federal Blue Box, so has shot relatively tight here, so you're probably bang on 1 inch or maybe just a tad over there for the main group. And then there's one outlier, and again, I don't know if you can actually see this looking up the range, but probably not. I'll try and zoom in. So right up the top there, you can see those pink targets up top. There's a little bit of vegetation in the way and I'm shooting through it, so some of those outliers I'm not necessarily going to blame the rifle, and clearly I don't want to admit to having fired a shot out there, but it is what it is. Okay, this next group down here is a bit of a surprise. So this is the 52 grain Federal stuff. So you've got 4 rounds really tight there. So that's probably, under 3/4 inch. And then you've got one little outlier here which would blow the whole group out to probably 1.25 inches in terms of total size. But yeah, quite impressive for that ammunition, considering that's a hot barrel too. And then the standout, which is probably not really a surprise with the twist rate on this rifle, is the 75 grain ammo. But if you keep the whole context here, fast shooting off a pretty average bag set up there, in keeping with the context of what this rifle is about, I'd say those group sizes are pretty reasonable. If I sat down and put one of my higher power optics on it, one of my little Zeiss units, 3 to 15s, etc, etc, and actually bothered to set myself up properly on the bench here, I think this rifle is capable of some very, very good accuracy. Obviously I'd say some of that lateral, well, there's not that much lateral error here, but yeah, it's a little bit to do with the actual setup for the shooting as described in the initial context. But yeah, all good. So just for the sake of context, what I'm going to do now is just a function test with a 10 round mag of just a standard 55 grain ammunition. So we're not here to test accuracy on this one, but there's obviously a lot talked about how fast a certain rifle will shoot, etc, etc. Now the key issue, as I've talked about earlier when I was doing the initial part of the review with the Wedgetail MPR Mini, is it's not speed in a tactical sense with these rifles that's important. You know, these things are tools. You know, would that be for the IPSC shooter? Would that be for the recreational hunter? Or would that be for the person on the land who's doing some land management and pest control on the hunting field? And certainly my context with these rifles is, you know, if you've got the right ammunition in it and you've got a mob of pigs out there, then, you know, that ability to, you know, act within the confines of the Animal Care and Protection Act and do some fast follow-up shooting to make sure that you can humanely destroy pests and indeed remove the actual problem. Now, that's a key component of a rifle like this, and that's where I really think these things fit on the Australian market. You know, they have a lot of other good uses, but, you know, for that, you know, useful tool on the land in pest control, particularly in the calibers that this is available in, you know, it's ideal in those sorts of scenarios. So what I'm going to do now, I won't bother turning the camera around. Most of you have seen the range here before, but I've got I don't know what size that gong is actually. It's probably 10 to 12 inches at 60 metres. So it's fairly representative of the chest of a medium-sized pig. And we're just going to bang 10 rounds through relatively quickly. I've just knocked that optic down to 2 power, which is about where I would realistically have it in the field. I've turned on the illuminated reticle. It is getting a little bit late in the afternoon here, so it's a bit, you know, the light conditions aren't great for shooting, but that's okay. And we'll just go through and do that. And you can get a bit of a feel for, you know, again, function of, you know, going through a 10 round mag when you get onto a mob of pigs. Okay, so we're in the field, we're in the ute, and we've just come across a mob of pigs. We're on the rest of the you know, car door or whatever, or the back of the ute, and we're about to engage a mob fairly quickly to get rid of those pest species. Righto. A little bit warm there. So as you can see, yeah, the form and function of these rifles is very good in that pest control context. And I will actually just go and turn that around so you can see what we're aiming at there, because it has a degree of relevance. So you can see down range there, that's us shooting here, and we'll zoom right in, and I don't know if that's helpful or not, but yeah, you can see right up there against the jungle edge, pink target, and they're all centre mass hits. So yeah, perfect, exactly what this rifle is for. Anyway, that's it for the shooting component. We'll head back up top and we'll finish off with some final thoughts and closing comments. So, having just been down the range and done some shooting with this setup, some closing thoughts on these rifles. Again, you know, I do like the Wedgetail rifles. They're really ergonomic, and you know that's as much a bit of a commentary on the AR platform as it is Wedgetail themselves. But you know, there's just a lot to like about the AR style blueprint in terms of its form, its functionality, you know, and how these things fit. You know, they're easy to shoot off arrest. They're easy to shoot standing. They're easy to use in the field, and all round just a good thing. Now the build quality on these is highly satisfactory. You know, there's no complaints I've got at this point. And to be honest, you know, whilst these are a very customizable rifle, you know, and I've replaced the trigger on mine due to personal preference, but there's not a lot I'd probably even consider changing on this rifle. You know, maybe an angled foregrip at some stage in the future, but in reality land I probably don't, I'm not too fussed about that. I don't super love the plastic pistol grip, although it's completely functional, checkered, no dramas. I just like the Magpul rubber one, so again, personal preference, so not really relevant in the overall context of what these rifles do. Yeah, so there's probably not a whole bunch more to say. Are they worth the price tag? Just under $3,000 for one of these rifles. In today's environment, absolutely. You're going to pay pretty close to that for most decent quality bolt action rifles, and most decent quality bolt action rifles won't do the broad range of tasks that these rifles will. I didn't mention it earlier in the review, but they come with a Lithgow barrel, and you get that Lithgow barrel which is fluted. You whack one of the Ninox brakes on it, you put one of the blast jackets on there from Wedgetail. These are a wonderful capability. They're short, they're handy, they're still getting appropriate velocities for 223 to do pest control work, so they're fine to shoot out to a couple of 100 metres and further with no issues at all. And with that blast jacket on the outside, they're not hard on your ears either. So there is a lot to like about this style of platform. And obviously, if you go and buy a Wedgetail, you're supporting Australian manufacturing of firearms. And I think many of those who have watched my reviews previously would understand I'm a massive fan of supporting Australian industry, and I talk a lot about Wedgetail because I appreciate the things they've done on the Australian market. But that's not to say that or take anything away from any of the other Australian manufacturers. So, even if you don't end up buying a Wedgetail but you like the style of rifle, have a look at some of the other Australian manufacturers out there as well. I don't think you can go wrong buying a Wedgetail. And as you've seen from the shooting part of this review, they're a quality bit of gear. So, yeah, there's honestly, with the trigger that I've changed on it, I really don't actually have any serious or significant complaints about the rifle at all. The accuracy part of what I did down there, I banged on about it a little bit in the shooting part as well, but that's really nothing to worry about. You're looking at groups there that are from an inch. If you take a couple of those flyers out, well under an inch, there's a couple of 1/2 to 3/4 inch groups there for 4 rounds, and it's just the 5th round, which is honestly probably me. They're very tidy groups, and then the rest of those groups within the context of an 8-power optic in the late afternoon shooting a target 100 metres away up in the rainforest, they're completely acceptable. And I think there's probably too much done, particularly in some of the circles that are out there now talking about accuracy that are fairly unrealistic. So the accuracy on this is more than suitable for every context you're going to use one of these rifles for. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my perspective on this rifle. It's a fairly laid back review that I've done, but it's a fairly easy review to do because there's nothing too critical to talk about. I like the blueprint, I like the layout, I like the way they shoot, I like how modular they are. These are just a good thing. So if you're considering this style of rifle, if you like this sort of action, I think it's great. They're fast, they're reliable, they're functional, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I reckon they look pretty good too. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. If you want to leave any comments or questions, feel free to do that, and I'll answer where I can. Thanks for watching.